I don't think it's overstating it to say that they were a little on their heels. Japan, EU, Koreans this afternoon. So our largest trading partners we have trade deals with. So the Chinese, who like to project strength and under this monolithic view, they were on their heels because it was like, listen, guys, this is the way it is. You've got a pretty good deal going, but the rest of the world is now with us. Ernest Hemingway saying, how did you go bankrupt? Slowly, then quickly. Their economic model is starting to implode, that somehow they believe that gravity doesn't apply to them. And what would we do to them? We'd wipe them out. Wipe them out.
Mr. Secretary, you just got back from Stockholm, Sweden. You were there meeting with the Chinese delegation about trade talks. This is your third such meeting, I believe, with them. Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened there, and then we'll get into some of the specifics about where things go from here on.
Well, what I can tell you is I don't think it's overstating it to say that they were a little on their heels, because the week before we had just done the Japanese trade deal. Then the day before we began our talks, I know you were in Scotland with the president, Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, came and did, what's the deal of the century with the EU. So Japan, EU, we are, I believe, meeting with the Koreans this afternoon. So our largest trading partners we have trade deals with. So the Chinese, who like to project strength and under this monolithic view, they were on their heels because it was like, listen, guys, this is the way it is. And you've got a pretty good deal going, but the rest of the world is now with us. And you're not going to get a special deal. You're not going to get this. The EU is a bigger trading partner, and the more excess manufacturing. I keep telling them that the Chinese have to rebalance their economy. They have the most imbalanced economy in the history of the modern world. They're 30% of manufacturing. They have a current account surplus that's equivalent to 2% of global GDP. We haven't seen that since the 1870s, 1880s, when there was the British Empire. And I just said that the world's with us now, because for a while, it looked in April, May, like the US was alone against the world. Now that we've done deals with our top trading partners, that we have a lot more leverage. And as you know, nobody generates leverage like the president.
That's exactly right. So one of the things he told me that President Trump told me when I interviewed him in Scotland, the goal is to get China to open up. Did you get the sense that they're open to opening up or their economy to American goods?
They will move at a very deliberate pace. I was in the macroeconomic investment business for 35 years. And I think probably the most overused saying recently is the Ernest Hemingway saying, how did you go bankrupt? Slowly, then quickly. I think that with a lot of these big economies, that it's a slow process, then it'll happen quickly. Like I remember the Japanese had the bubble burst. They didn't want to do much about it. Then Abe came, President Trump's great friend, Prime Minister Abe, came into office in 2012, and boom, the Japanese hit the accelerator and never looked back. So my sense is that it's not going to be a straight line, that they are doing, they have 5-year planning sessions. They are meeting for the planning sessions. It's called the 5-year plan. They are doing their 5-year plan in September or October. They'll announce the results of that in February. So I encourage them that if they are going to rebalance to more of a consumer economy, to make that known, that we'll see. I think the Chinese model, their economic model is starting to implode, that somehow they believe that gravity doesn't apply to them in real estate. They're in the middle of a real estate crisis. And I think that the rest of the world will have had it with just the Chinese pushing out these cheap goods. part of the discussion with the Chinese, they sell the precursor drugs for fentanyl.
Sure.
If I hear the opium war, we didn't create the opium wars, and that they were able to turn off the supply of rare earth magnets very quickly. If they wanted to, they could turn off the supply of these precursor chemicals. And I have had children of two friends from the richest suburb in America, Greenwich, Connecticut, die of fentanyl. Mm-hmm. Imagine what we were doing if there were a terrorist organization that were killing 200,000 Americans a year. What would we do to them? We'd wipe them out. We are pushing as hard as we can on cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. That Treasury was hacked. Before I arrived, OCC was hacked. We believe that they were both Chinese hackers, which were brought up during our meetings yesterday, or in the 2 days. So we are holding a tabletop exercise with the regulators. I believe we just did it 2 weeks ago in case of a large-scale cyber attack. And we're pushing as hard as we can on this because, again, with generative AI, that they could just grab your voice and do it. I think my public affairs team, I think, pulled down 30 false Facebook pages of me, of things I said. Somebody came out and said, oh, sell everything, buy this.
Mm-hmm. Jameson, what would a deal with China look like as far as being a victory for the United States? What do you want to see China do?
So first of all, tariffs on China right now, all in, are about 55%, which for us is a good deal, right? They've been a very challenging actor on trade for a long time. We're going to trade with China. We want to have a good, healthy trade relationship with China, but there are certainly problems we have to correct for. In the future, if we have some other kind of deal or modification with China, obviously, we'd want to talk to the president and make sure he agrees with that. But I would envision something that is much more balanced, much more open to the U.S. and protects our industries here at home. I think you can find a spot where you can have all of those things. Obviously, the Chinese have to agree to that and be part of that. Maybe they want to, maybe they don't. But President Xi and President Trump, they have a good relationship. We are trying to actively have something that's good for American workers and American businesses. But it certainly takes two to agree to that kind of setup.
And I know the president has been able to open up lots of countries to U.S. businesses. He's also been able to get certain countries to do away with the digital services tax and other non-tariff barriers. But China is a special case, and China has been tougher than the other countries, I assume, because they're undermining the United States at every turn. Whether it's surveillance or intellectual property theft or bringing pathogens into the country, fentanyl, COVID cover-up. How do you deal with those kinds of things? How do you negotiate with a player that has shown us that they're a bad actor?
Well, first of all, you have to understand and acknowledge all of that. Everything you just said, Maria. I've been negotiating and dealing with the Chinese for many years. I've represented U.S. companies who have suffered from dumped imports from the Chinese. At the same time, this is a major economy. This is a big country. We have to be able to get along with these folks. Their economy and our economy, it's like a square peg in a round hole. They don't really fit together very well, and so it's resulted in a lot of costs to our industrial base. So you have to find a way to adapt to each other in a way where you can have trade. Maybe it's trade in non-sensitive goods. It's certainly trade that has to be more balanced. And you just have to manage that situation. Otherwise, you end up in the situation where we've been, where we have tens of thousands of factories going over there and millions of manufacturing jobs, and we just can't have that anymore. President Trump has put a stop to it, and we'll just keep working with the Chinese to make sure our economies can interact in a way that's beneficial for the United States.
Will you be using the economic levers that you certainly can be pulling? And that is all those Chinese stocks traded on U.S. exchanges. We have the most liquid, deepest capital markets in the world. China wants those markets. They want to sell those companies to our investors. Would you use that as a lever to try to get the Chinese Communist Party in line with trade?
We have enormous leverage over the Chinese. You have that issue with the stock exchange. You have certain products of ours that they need. They still rely on the U.S. dollar and will for a long time with respect to their international trade. So there's plenty of leverage. The goal is not to have some kind of tit-for-tat, leverage war with the Chinese at all. All of that is obviously there. President Trump has shown enormous strength in deploying certain tools to help them understand the leverage. Listen, I just got back from talking with them in Stockholm, and it was a very cordial exchange. We had a great conversation with the Chinese. We talked more about how to make sure critical minerals are flowing. We feel very confident in that direction. So, we're having constructive talks right now. If we ever feel like we need to, use leverage, we will, and we'll certainly always do whatever's in the national interest in terms of national security. That's not really a leverage point. That's just national security. So, again, this is a challenging relationship, and we have to manage it, and the president's doing it wonderfully.
So you have confidence that they will continue to send the rare earth magnets into the United States? Because there was a report in the Financial Times a couple of weeks ago that they were pressuring companies before they sent any rare earth minerals or magnets. They wanted to know where they were used. They wanted data from these companies. You feel confidence after your meeting?
We do. We do feel confident, and part of this is in the data. We've already seen the rare earth starting to flow in a much better way since in April, and since our meeting earlier this week, we have even greater confidence on this front. Listen, the more we have government-to-government communication, from our staff all the way up to our leaders, the easier it is to manage these challenges. Our problems with China aren't going to go away overnight. We're fortunate that the president understands this and has equipped his advisors to deal with the problem.